Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 6G Spectrum Realities discussion. My name is Stefan Pongratz. I'm one of the analysts here at the Dell'Oro Group. I will be moderating today's chat. And I have today we have 4 experts joining us, coming from different parts of the ecosystem. We have Julia Criado, Maite Aparicio, Vincent Mérat, and Wong. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here to share your insights. And shortly, I will ask each one of you to expand a little bit on that introduction. And also, I want to apologize if I pronounce your names incorrectly. But first, just want to clarify, we have about 40 minutes total. That includes Q&A. If you see a question, type it into the chat. I should clarify, if you see a question related to 6G spectrum, type it into the chat and we'll take them as they go. But the overall objective of today is to talk about 6G spectrum, the spectrum bands. We'll talk about how that is going to impact the CapEx ramp and the timing, harmonization, uplink challenges, interaction with non-3GPP. So we'll try to cover some grounds, but of course we are a little bit limited on time as well. With that, let's go around the table here and expand a little bit on that introduction. Who wants to start?
I can do it. So, hello. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here today in this panel. I'm Maite Aparicio. I have been working in Telefonica for more than 20 years. And now I lead the run innovation in activities in Global CTIO. And since April 2025, I have also chaired the Spectrum Working Group of the 6GAA. Happy to be here.
Great to have you. Julia, okay, go ahead.
No, Julian, please.
We're just going through quick introductions, Julia. So we haven't, so it's all good. So, oh, you're muted. Vincent, go ahead.
Okay, I'm Vincent Mérat. I'm the head of spectrum policy at Bouygues Telecom, a mobile operator in France. So I've been following ITU and CPT work on regulation. I'm also involved in auctions in France and also ensuring the compliance to regulation of my company internally. Pleasure to be here.
Great to have you.
Great. Why don't I just go next? Hi, my name is Wong. I work at VIAVI Solutions. We're a global test and measurement company, focus a lot on all aspects of the network, from wireless to wireline, fiber. My role is in the CTO office. I lead our RF and wireless technology strategy and architecture. I co-chair the test and integration focus group in the O-RAN Alliance. So I am also the tech lead for Valor. Valor is a lab funded by the US NTIA, NOFO 1, where we're offering lab as a service to the O-RAN ecosystem. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Julia, are you muted?
We still can't hear you.
We'll give her a couple of seconds.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Very
okay.
good.
Something has happened to my headphones. Okay, so I will use the webcam microphone. This is Julia Criado. I'm the Deputy Director for Spectrum Planning and Management in the Spanish administration, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Radio Spectrum Policy Group, which is an advisory political group on spectrum for the Commission, the European Commission.
Okay, great. I'm glad you're here and that we can hear you. I think the one thing I see in common here is that all of you know a lot more about 6G spectrum than I do. So this is good. So with that, let's a basic question, just to make sure we're all on the same wavelength, so to speak. I feel like, and that is really, do we need 6G? Personally, I feel like we've seen a change in the sentiment across the industry. I'm actually working on myself on a 6G report, and we've spoken with a lot of people lately. And in general, with the operators, I feel like over the past 6-9 months, yeah, it has changed the overall attitude. But I want to hear, everybody wants to hear from you. So the first question is very basic. Do we need 6G?
I can start if
We
you
already
want,
figured it
Stefan.
out.
Okay. Bueno, Telefonica, do we need 6G? What we can say is Telefonica prepare a white paper when we share our vision of 6G. And in this document, we mentioned that we believe that it's more constructive to focus on the evolution toward future 3GPP releases rather than discussion on future generation in abstract terms. So we prefer to talk about the benefits and expectations of the future network as a continuous activity, trying to address all the trends and the market needs. You have this white paper available since May, and there we mention many things about the requirements that we are expected for the next generation or next release. So there we mentioned that we prefer to have a sustainable and trustworthiness network by design, that we want to have artificial intelligence in all the layers, that we want to introduce the non-terrestrial network and terrestrial network. So there are many key requirements that we are going to prepare the networks in the future. But if we are going to need or not, it's something that is mainly dealing with the market trends. I mean, if there is a specific use case that probably cannot be supported by the existing 5G advanced 5G capabilities, probably we need to force to move to a new generation on a new 3GPP release in order to address this to address these use cases, or probably we need to have these new capabilities in order to address specific use cases that can probably provide in a better way with new capabilities of the network. Okay.
Great.
Yes, definitely from Bouygues Telecom side, we fully agree with what Maite said. As mobile operator, we want to have new functionality to help us to better manage our network. That will turn into some QoS improvement for a customer, because you will have more reliability of the networks. So we think that 6G, it should include that, and not only some obvious KPIs improvements such as throughput and latency. There should be more than that. And yes, you were also talking about use cases. If we move back 7 to 10 years ago, before 5G, when we were imagining use cases, we thought about automated vehicles, about remote surgery with haptic feedback, with massive IoT everywhere. But the least we can say is that today, some of them have not materialized yet. So yes, for 6G, we should be careful not to oversell the technology. And today, we don't know if there will be a disruptive use case that can be done with 5G and which will need 6G, or whether it will be only a capacity increase as it was for 5G. And yeah, for 5G, if you ask our customer, maybe they would say that they didn't see what 5G has provided over 4G. But actually, what was provided by 5G is a capacity improvement, and that helped to relieve the pressure on 4G. So it has had some concrete benefits to our customer, even if it's not visible to them.
If I may.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I wanted to point out that from the administration perspective, where we follow the ideal to have the more spectrum efficiency possible, we think it is needed, because the standards for 6G will be built from the beginning on sharing, on non-terrestrial networks that will complement, and on the capacities that the artificial intelligence can provide. So from the regulator's perspective, we think it is good that the 6G comes and introduce these new ways to provide the network, or to just to protocolize the network. And in relation to 5G, for instance, what I have found from my experience here, it is that when 4G was here, enterprises were not asking for a spectrum to self-provide themselves the services, but with 5G they have. So there has been also a good reception of 5G by enterprises, also small enterprises, for instance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and maybe I could chime in from I guess the vendor community,
Yeah.
test measurement vendor. You asked needs versus wants, right? I was talking to my kids, what is a need, what's a want? I think for the vendor community, it's actually a need, right? Just kidding aside, because it's really needed for survival of a lot of vendor businesses, but also for operator standpoint. I mean, I attend 3GPP, ORAN, my team does, and when we did like the workshop on 3GPP, right, and collected the motivation, right, on 6G, like from out of the 9 key points, right, 5 of them are all about efficiency, right? It's more than majority, right? The other 2 on growth and performance, of course, they're important, but it's all about how do I make my network more efficient using AI, simplifying the air interface, making it more spectrum efficient, energy efficient. It's all about, I think at the end of the day, lowering the cost per bit, because at the end of the day, the demand for bandwidth is still increasing, but the willingness of people to pay do not. And so, I think this new generation, just like the jump from 4G to 5G, needs to have a substantial lowering of the cost per bit. And that primarily comes from the increase in capacity and efficiency that can, again, and then of course, the new growth that comes from new services, maybe like, integrated sensing or XR, etc., will be very beneficial. But I think ultimately it boils down to cost per bit.
That's good. I like this start, and I see there are some differing opinions here. Yeah, I think from our perspective, I think we see the same thing. Of course, with 5G, it would have been good if we could have seen more new use cases. But now with 6G, I do feel like we're trying to be more responsible and anchor the business case based on what we know, as opposed to but based on hope on what we don't know. And so I think, personally, from our perspective, we typically tell people that it's a lot of it is dependent on the timing, and if you can lower the cost per bit to the capacity, and if it's needed, as opposed to trying to wait for new use cases to justify it. But that's good. I like the discussion so far. All right, the question now, of course, if we do 6G, one of the beauties with 5G was simply that we had this golden band with the C-band. It was harmonized. It was available globally. It provided significant capacity improvements relative to the 4G spectrum that the operators had at the time. So what bands are we? Can we find something similar with 6G? What are the key bands basically that are realistically usable for 6G?
I can start, but
Yeah.
but here we see in Telefonica 3 main things related with what are the main frequency bands that we are going to require in 6G. The most important one for us is the upper part of the 6 GHz band. You know that Telefonica support the letter that the main European operators signed through the GSMA in order to address and push the use of this upper part of 6 GHz as a only way of starting doing things in 6G. We believe that this frequency band is going to allow us to accelerate or in some way trying to start doing things in 6G as soon as possible. If not, we are going to fail due to the constraints that we have in other mid-bands that we have in Europe. So the first for us is the use of the upper part of 6 GHz 6 GHz bands. And you know that in Telefonica we are pushing with the European other European operators, but we are also doing proof of concepts, trying to show the benefits of this frequency band, because we see that the propagation losses that probably we can't have due to we are going to increase the frequency, we can compensate in some way using antenna elements that allow us to reuse the existing grid in band C that we have in our current network. So for us, it's key trying to push for this band. The other point is, and probably is going to be a long-term decision, is based on what the things are moving in the EMT. Based on the next agenda of the World Radio Communication Conference of 2027, probably the frequencies around 4 gigahertz and the portions of the frequency range 3 probably is going to be an opportunity, but we need to release in Europe, because as you know, these frequency bands are already used by other services. And finally, probably we need to identify if there is an opportunity in the low frequency bands in order to have universal coverage. But this is something that probably is going to discuss even further, because as far as I know, in the agenda of a World Radio Communication Conference on 2031 is when these discussions are going to come to the industry. So first, upper part of 6 GHz bands. Second, how we are going to use the mid bands, and finally the situation of the low frequency bands, because at this point in time we consider that probably the sub-terahertz and terahertz is something that we need to skip it due to the challenges that we have behind these bands.
Okay, that's a good start. Upper 6, mid band, low frequency band.
I would like to tell you about what the Radio Spectrum Policy Group has been doing in relation to the evolution the evolution for 6G in Europe. In February of this year, a report on the 6G strategic vision was published, and based on this report, the RSPG is preparing a roadmap. And in this roadmap, as Maite said, there are, like in the 5G, there are still very, it is in elaboration, but it is approaching the same, I am telling this not well. It is elaborated with the same approach as in 5G. That is what I wanted to say. And in relation to the upper 6 GHz band, we will have in November a plenary meeting where we must have take a decision. And we have been in the subgroup that deals with this matter. We have been meeting in order to assess the contributions of the stakeholders to the draft test that was in public consultation during the summer. And we have see that the arguments are the same, and the same stakeholders are in their positions. So what the RSPG will do is to find the best solution for Europe in that plenary meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe I can help chime in from a US standpoint, right? Being a US-based company, as you know, definitely the upper 6 gigahertz is a challenge for the US. It has been allocated primarily for unlicensed usage like Wi-Fi. So there's definitely a keen focus in the US on the upper mid-band. There is yet another wrinkle, as you probably have known, when the Congress passed the Big Beautiful Bill in the US. There's a carve out on 7.4 to 8.4 gigahertz for to not be used. So in a way, for WRC 27, it's really 7.125 to 7.4 becomes at least what's really available. And so that's a wrinkle. However, like the 14.8 to 15.3 is still potentially globally harmonized. It is kind of much higher in frequency compared to where we are in C-band, somewhere in between C-band and millimeter wave. I think there's a lot of interesting characteristics in that band that could potentially give us the best of both worlds with a lot of spectrum. So that's an interesting one. And for US only, there's also something under rulemaking now, basically 12.7 to 13.2. And essentially that's being considered for a chunk of the upper mid band as well being looked into. But there's still some competing uses for that between satellite and terrestrial. But we'll see how that goes. But in addition to all of these, of course, these are kind of the new bands, but existing bands, of course, in 5G, FR1, FR2 are also considered, of course, for use in 6G. And technologies like MRSS, multi-rat spectrum sharing, will allow a much more seamless migration, right? Kind of learning from our lessons in 5G with DSS. Hopefully, by the time 6G comes along, we can have a much smoother migration between 5G and 6G.
Good.
And coming back to Europe,
Yes.
I think that indeed, when you want to launch a new technology, you need a new frequency band. It has been the case for 4G with the 800 megahertz and the 2.6 gigahertz band. It has been the case for 5G with the 3.5 gigahertz band. So there is a need for a new frequency band because when you launch the technology, there is a low support in the terminal. So the capacity you get from that new technology in the existing band won't compete with the current technology with 4G or 5G. So there is a need for a new frequency band, and upper 6G is indeed a good candidate. But when we talk about spectrum, we talk about two things. We talk about physics, what you can do with a band, and the technology can improve what you can do with a given band. But we talk also about regulation. So how the policymakers decide to assign the band to the user. And that will have a huge impact on the economics and on the sustainability of the investment you will make with that band. And for example, for the 6 gigahertz band, if there is a move to allocate only a small portion of that band for IMT, that means that mobile operator will only have small blocks. And when you deploy a frequency band, it's the same cost whether you have a 100 megahertz block or 200 megahertz block, but the capacity is a lot different. So how the policymaker will decide to allocate the band is important. If they decide also to have some huge deployment obligations, taking into account that we often hear that the 6 gigahertz will have the same cell radius as the 3.5 gigahertz and to the antenna improvement, then it will also be a challenge for mobile operator. So we should be careful on how the band will be allocated and assigned to the users. And another point, and I agree that 6 GHz alone won't be enough. I think that nobody wants to reproduce what has been done with 5G, having this two-phase launch, NSA first and then standalone. We would like to be able to launch standalone 6G right from the beginning. And to do that, there is a need to have some low bands along with upper 6 GHz.
Good. This is good. We see that the spectrums are a little bit spread out here between US and Europe. But I think one key point that you made there is that once you operators deploy it, the cost the cost delta between doing, let's say, a 20 megahertz channel or 100 or 200 or 300 is not that significant. But the bandwidth delta and in order to get that step function that we improvement in cost per bit that we saw when going from 2 gigahertz 4G to upper mid-band 5G, it's going to be important, I believe, to get larger chunks of spectrum. So with that, I think we can go to the next question.
Stefan,
Yeah,
Stefan,
sorry.
I just would like to highlight that even if this range 3 bands will be surely, or parts of them, providing 6G, administrations are looking at the protection of the incumbent services today. So that it is another challenge that it is on the table, how to protect the incumbent services. It is what I wanted to highlight as well.
Good. In terms of deploying this, I think Vincent touched on a little bit on the some of the propagation challenges, and that we're trying to realize the same coverage with upper 6 and then eventually 8 and 10, some parts of the 7 as the C-band spectrum. And the question is, how do you think how the operators will deploy 6G if these in these bands? Less so obviously in the sub 6 GHz and below, but in the, I guess, in the upper 6 and above. How do you think that will be deployed, and how will that impact, I guess, the ramp of 6G?
I can start again trying to provide a short comment on this. I think that more or less I mentioned before that the upper part of the 6 GHz is our ambition is trying to reuse the existing band C grid. So the idea probably in order to compensate the propagation losses, probably we need to increase the number of antenna elements in the active antenna. So probably is the one option in order to reuse the existing grid. If we if we want to compensate, if we take it into account that we are going to have more propagation losses, probably we need to increase the densification. But this is something that we want to avoid in some way. We want to start reusing as much as possible the band C that we already have in place. Okay.
Okay, great. Leverage the existing site grid as much as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess maybe from a test and measurement standpoint, and also hearing from a lot of our customers, right? I mean, I would echo that, right? I mean, site acquisition is always a large cost and a big headache, and one of the really pitfalls for FR2, right? In a lot of geographies is the need for that additional site acquisition for densification. So anything will definitely need to reuse existing sites as much as possible. So the ability for these higher frequency bands, again, to have larger arrays, to provide the same coverage with better capacity is extremely important, and it's one of the key KPIs. But I think the other thing too is the, let's call it the opportunity, right? The opportunity here is, this is the first generation that we're going to be AI native from the start. There's a lot of things we can do to be much smarter about load balancing, spectrum allocation, interference avoidance, in kind of these new bands of interest that I think we could leverage again to really drive down the cost per bit. And we've been getting challenged by a lot of our operator vendor customers to really think through, how to drive down the cost of deployment, drive down the cost of maintenance of these new networks. So I think there's going to be a lot of innovation, I think, around this area to again address the need of operators. Yeah.
From my side, only to say that when more harmonized spectrum is there, and if possible, reducing the sites, of course, that would be simpler, and would allow a very fast first rollout. But I am also thinking that we will also see how this starts to deploy, seeing what will be the use case that it is shown first. I think that demand will be also be there.
Okay, good. I think we have covered some ground. I do want to touch a little bit on harmonization here and what it means, because compared to 5G, we'd had that golden band, and here I hear very many different golden bands for different countries. So how is that going to play out when we're so spread out here?
Well, that's a difficult question. In fact, we are following from the beginning the developments or the studies under the ITUR. But it is true that each region has their own specificities. But I see there is some room to have quite harmonized the 6 GHz band. There are many ASEAN countries, yes, and I think also China. There are many big countries which already have the possibility to use this upper 6 GHz band or parts of this spectrum for 6G. So that is one of the most harmonized one. And it is true that for the upper bands, it could be more difficult, as well as for the lower bands, I think. But the thing is, when more global, less cost, of course. That is okay. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, that's good. I can say it, since you have to be careful. I don't have to be so careful with what I say. So I'm going to say I do believe the US is going to have to change the track here when it comes to the 6 GHz spectrum. That's just I don't see a way around it. But when I speak with spoken with a lot of different people, we do see kind of like a golden band forming a little bit in the 6.4 to the 8.4 GHz range. But I of course recognize, in terms of the big beautiful build there, some of the challenges, but generally that seems to where it's kind of like honing in, and that would, of course, then would give I don't know how much spectral efficiency gains we're going to get out of when going from 5G base case to 6G, but if it's 20 to whatever 20% or something like that, then with the spectrum factor and perhaps some AI gains, and it could be again a potential step function increase in the cost per bit, reduction, I should say, in the cost per bit. I think I'm not sure we're going to have time to talk so much about the uplink challenges here. I wanted to actually, maybe quickly, like if these are the spectrum bands, like how will it work? Do you have any thoughts about what will happen to the uplink? Because obviously there's a lot of RF innovation happening that will address. We've seen some demonstrations already by key players, and they're fairly confident that they can make it work with more antennas, etc. And in the downlink, but the uplink is always a challenge. Yeah, what can be done there? I guess. Yeah. If yeah.
Maybe I could start this time.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Vendor and equipment standpoint. I mean, I think one thing, I mean, the latest news coming out 3GPP is at least the uplink waveform is pretty much settled, right? It's not going to change, right? It's going to be OFDM and DFD spread. The downlink was kind of still kept open potentially for new services like integrated sensing, but so that means that I think a lot of the advances we've made so far through 5G with I guess lower PAPR web forms with DFT spread is going to continue, and I think the larger arrays that we will expect at these frequencies, we should be able to close the gap. What's going to be even more interesting is, of course, 6G is also going to be the first, I would say, TN, NTN, generation, right? Wherein both will wanted to be designed from the get-go. It's definitely much more challenging to go uplink to a satellite, and I think we definitely need to solve that problem. There are some innovative things happening there as well, right? But it's at the end of the day, the rules of physics don't go away, right? You need more antenna gain. You can only transmit as much, and so a lot is burdened on the base station receivers, right? To have the lowest noise figure, best interference cancellation algorithms. And I think there's definitely a lot of innovation there that's happening both on the device side and signal processing side, that I think that'll I don't want to say it won't be a problem, but there will be other bigger problems, I think, that we will need to tackle.
Yes, in order to complement this, the situation is that probably not to the arrival of 6G, because the evolution of the trends of the market, probably the services that we are going to provide are going to be completely different than the ones that we are already provide. We are going to have this holographic communications. We are going to introduce the artificial intelligence. So we need to think about how this applies to the management of the uplink. And probably we need to start to talking about the uplink and downlink decoupling. That is something that is already discussing in the industry, and we need to think about how we are going to manage in a completely different way that we are managing the uplink in 5G. And in this regard, it's important all the innovations that you are mentioning, that Ian is mentioning, related with new techniques for beamforming. We need to consider probably using the artificial intelligence for the network, not the network for the artificial intelligence, trying to work in these both ways. Probably we need to introduce new capabilities in order to enhance the options in the terminal in order to reduce the power consumption. So I agree with you that there is a lot of innovation in order to improve how the uplink is going to perform.
Good. We're almost just one very quick one because we don't have much time left, but when it comes to the relationship with non-3GPP like Wi-Fi, do you anticipate that changing with 6G? Will they move closer to each other, work better, or will it be somewhat similar like what we have now? I know it's tough.
I have here in Telefonica, we have a request, sorry, because I'm talking too much, but in our white paper, we mentioned that our ambition is not to have Wi-Fi and 6G as a separate or competitive platforms. We prefer to trying to coordinate and integrate in some way. Let's see how we are going to do it, because it's not an easy thing, but this is our ambition, trying to integrate both things and trying to address specific applications, probably considering that we are going to have both platforms or both systems working together. This is our ambition, but let's see.
Let's see, yes.
Yeah, and I guess it's no surprise, right? Like still, 80% of traffic is indoors for a lot of operators around the world, and the importance of Wi-Fi can't be understated. I mean, 3GPP, there's the interworking network function. I think that's something that's there. But also, one thing that I've been, I mean, if you remember during 5G, there's this concept of, LLA and LTEU at one point, and LAA, and it really hasn't panned out, to be honest, right? I think there's much more interest now on, hey, you know what, let Wi-Fi do its thing. We really need it as a technology. Let's be complementary to it rather than putting a cellular protocol on top of an unlicensed band. So at least the sentiment, it seems, of the industry is towards kind of being more complementary than before. At least that's kind of my sense. Yeah.
More complementary. Writing it down. Okay, good. Anyone else? Any final? No, go ahead.
Just to tell you that as you, at least those based in Europe, will know that the CEPT is doing studies for sharing, in particular in the upper 6 GHz band. And the will of the administrations will be that this will be a possibility to share the spectrum between both technologies. But more studies will be done yet. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We're out of time. This has been a very insightful discussion. Thank you so much for sharing, taking the time and sharing your expert opinions. We now need to hand back to the team here. Thank you. Have a great rest of the day.
Goodbye. Goodbye.